So now the second from the last group of organization of indigenous people is the Maranao. So they are in Lanao del Sur, Lanao del Norte, and Sultan Kudarat, and the Northern Cotabato. So they are the major Muslim groups, and they take pride of being unconquered by the colonizers. And they have resisted any form of foreign domination for centuries. So now traditional government is called the Solotan or the Sultan. So this title, they have the power of executive, judicial, and legislative. So the qualification for becoming a Solotan or a Sultan is that one must be wealthy, wise, married, courageous, and of good moral character. The Sultanate is based on the Islam, so supported the power of the Sultan rests with the Quran, but it actually derives from personal wealth, strength, and number of supporters. So yeah, they said that it comes from Quran, but then it is actually comes from their money, their strength, and their influence in the community. So they maintain alliance with the other sultanates, but they are independent from one another. So the Sultan or any titled Datu can continue to exercise authority as long as he is able to perform his duties. So, and then one of the things is he cannot be impeached even if he is corrupt, cruel, or like some of the negatives. The Sultan settles these disputes, promotes peace and order. So they are the one who performs traditional rites and assists in religious ceremonies. So the Dato presides over settlements of conflict with the assistance of a Kali or legal consultant. And then the rule of succession in the traditional government is not defined on when a sultan lays down his crown. Choosing a successor takes time. So the head of the families of the Dato nominate a successor, and usually when the sultan lays down his crown or his power, the one who would take over that position is where the families of the Dato, the heads of the families of the Dato, would nominate one among them, which the criteria is the age, the wealth, and the one who has the biggest clan, so they can nominate the next sultan. So they use salsila or genealogy, taritib or customs, and igma practices to guide them. So when a new sultan is chosen, so there are rites to give to recognize the new sultan. So there be festivities and such. So long before the advent of formal democratic structures, there had already existed laws, customs, traditions, and beliefs among the Maranaos. So the source of their law is the adat or the customary law. The source of their authority is from the adat or the customary law, which supports the structure of the power structure and social organizations. So this includes the Islamic law and the taritib, a collection of customs and traditions, titles, givens, that defines pattern of social behavior and relationship, status of ranking families, and titles given to individuals. So the authority on this is called pananaritib. So the genealogy of families or sarasila relates the kinship structure of groups of people and their distribution on social ranks. So it shows that the sultan doesn't limit it to only to the Maranaos or the royal classes. So actually, there's a man from Sicily, which is Sultan Makapundeg Coranao Ragat, or Sultan Benefactor of the people of Lanao. So he's the House of Representative granted De Rossi Filipino citizenship, so to be able to become a sultan, and then he continued to serve for 14 years and helped build schools, delivered potable water, and such such policies and actions. So a title is very important and desirable to Maranaos, even among the educated. So it does not only indicate the royal lineage, power, and influence, but then it also guarantees getting elected and to stay in that power. So the Maranao is their leadership and governance is connected to the Islam because of their Muslim religion, and how the Adat is where they take the authority from. So the last one is the Tiboli. So they live in the interior highlands of High South Cotabato, bordering Davao del Sur. So the word means the term is derived from Taga, meaning people of, and Bilil, meaning rolling hills. So even though the Tibolis didn't convert to Islam, but then they adopted the Dato leadership system from Islam. So while the organizing principle in the society is kinship, communities are also linked through a recognized leader who does not really command, but whose word is respected through because of his status, economic means, and his courage and his skill to settle disputes. So their leadership can be a male chieftain or a datu, or a female chieftain or princess, which is what you call boy. So the leader of the Tiboli society. So their position is not hereditary. It cannot be passed down from their families. She or he may be the oldest member of the founding family, must be well educated and a good speaker, just like the rest of the qualifications on how to become a leader in the indigenous people. So the Dato does not exercise control over specific area or groups, not as superior to others. So the Dato or boy, they are the ones who perform the social, economic, religious, and political functions in their community. So they are viewed as the village headman who can settle intertribal disputes, who decides on land conflicts. So whether they could sow some seeds for agriculture, or they could build houses or to abandon settlements after consulting the elders of the community. So the Dato head of the Tiboli is the one who decides the judiciary function. So they are the one who decides the innocence or guilt of an accused or an offender. So their court is made up of respected elders of the community. So one of the functions of the Dato include handling issues like agawan ng asawa, which is wife snatching, which often happens in a Tiboli village, dealing with other crimes like theft, and resolving community conflicts. So it is very common to see the Dato's descendants occupying formal government positions like barangay captains and such. In dispute settlements, local government authorities, so in like dispute settlement, so the local government waits for the Dato to be able to decide on what to do with the community. I wait for the recommendation on what to do with the community. So in the observation of the indigenous people, this is according to Maria Oliva Domingo. So the pattern of their leadership in the IP community is that the authority of leaders and the council of elders. So except for the Ifugao, most of in the study, all the IPs have either a formal or informal leader. So they may be just a simple leader in their group or in their household, in the Mangi, or as elaborate as the Sultanate or Dato system in Mindanao. So the common feature among the Bontog, Ifugao, and Kalina is the use of go-between or the mediators. So this mechanism indicates that they try to settle any conflicts and not just like going out to war. So in the observation and in the indigenous leadership that we have tackled on the IPs is that It includes the roles and functions and the basis of authority, where it is the presence of the Council of Elders, and the criteria used by the IPs for the choice of the respective leaders in the discussion. So, except in the Ifugao, all the IP communities that we have studied, they have either a formal or informal leader in their community. So, it could be just a simple leader in their household, or it could be like the sultanate who rules over a larger territory, or it could be the use of the go-betweens or the mediators by the groups of Bontok, Ifugao, and the Kalinga. So, what we have studied upon in this, on how the indigenous people have their qualifications in their leaders, is that they have a very high standard for their leadership. So, of course, the leaders must be wise, mature, experienced, fair in making judgments, rich, articulate, knowledgeable of custom laws and traditions, skilled in negotiation and arbitration, and must be recognized by the community. So, they also have a very high respect for elders, who are generally the ones chosen as leaders or who become members of an advisory council. So, since the government and larger society do not sanction head-taking, so it is no longer a criterion for leadership. But then, in their leaders are actually those who prove themselves to be worthy of their roles in their community. It could be like the good acting, like the act of good in their community, or act of bravery for their community. They have multiple roles, the IP leaders, but the common role is that they are the one who settle disputes or conflicts in their settlement. So, the IP leaders act as judge, mediator, or arbiter to maintain peace and order in their respective communities. So, it is the reason why, like, so that is the reason why they choose those who have the age, wisdom, experience, and knowledge of custom laws for their necessary to take on that leadership. So, also, why is it that they want the wealthy ones to take on the leadership roles? So, this is because the financial stability is very important. So, one of the explanation is leaders must ensure that judgment in dispute settlement are implemented, including the payment of penalties, which they themselves usually have to assume if the offending party cannot afford it. So, they are the ones who would take that role on. The sanctions are more of through persuasion and appeal for supernatural intervention rather than through coercion. So, yeah, like they're very religious in their own religion. So, leadership is generally consultation and mediation because leader has the respect and support of the community. It is common for the IPs to concentrate all leadership functions, whether secular or sacred, in the person of the leaders. Thus, indigenous leaders are at once economic and spiritual leaders. So they are both in the economic and in the religious leadership roles. Also, their custom laws are not written, but it is passed through community action and decision making. That is why having the ability to talk well is one of the qualifications of becoming a leader. So, where their leaders and followers have been understood by their community. So, one of the some lessons for public administration is that indigenous leadership and governance are part of the values and tradition of the IPs. So, it is their way of life. Democratic governments from the local and national level have intruded in that in their way of life. So it has forced the IPs to adapt and make change on their mode of leadership. So they imposes law that is not grounded in their the indigenous people's value, culture, tradition, and practice. So the formal structures are very alien to them, and they are not clearly understood by all members of the community. So administrative offices and local governments units run parallel to their traditional leadership and governance, so causing confusion because on how the contemporary governance and the traditional law do not go one way with each other, so they will have a confusion on how this new government that has been imposed upon them. So So while the indigenous leaders made decisions for the community, external institutions and persons have taken over decision making for the indigenous peoples. As the title leaders, the Constitution expressly forbid the enactment of any law. The Constitution doesn't allow for any law that could have titles of nobility or royalty. It is an en banc decision. The Supreme Court noted that titles of royalty or nobility have been maintained and appeared to be accorded some value among some members of certain cultural groups. However, such title of royalties or nobility are not generally recognized or acknowledged social in the national community. So they don't have the rights or privilege to be granted upon them if they have that title of nobility or royalty when it comes to the national level. So they also have faced challenges in their standards and structures of leadership, because government leaders as of now don't have, like, both administrative and political are not necessarily wise, experienced, and respected elders of the community. At times they can be young and inexperienced. They can be insensitive to traditional customs and practices, and therefore it could offend the sensibilities of some IPs. So laws, rules, and orders and sanctions may run counter to accepted ways of settling disagreements and conflicts. So this study has shown that the indigenous people leadership and governance is effective in governing the daily lives of the indigenous people. So they are able to endure because they fulfill the needs of these people. So they cannot be totally disregarded or set aside in the name of development of the government. So they can contribute to enhancing the relevance and effectiveness of formal governance processes. So indigenous people really put a premium on an elder as a requirement for leadership. Public servants should be sensitive to this tradition. In dealing with IPs, older, more mature, and experienced public servant would most likely have the ear of the group over one who is perceived to be raw and experienced. So the Council of Elders in IP community is an effective mechanism for community participation and oversight body. So leadership is shared among wise and experienced elders, and the council checks or diffuse the power of the leader. So local government units may have well considered this participatory leadership structure. In dealing with the IPs, it would be likewise to be wise move for public servants to seek the leaders or the Council of Elders first before doing what they want. The use of go-between may also improve the chance for success in the system of the government. So takeaway for this discussion is that the political and administrative leaders should have reflect upon the standards of the IP's leadership. So merit and fitness should always prevail. The leaders of IPs are people who always possess the necessary qualities for leadership. like as been stated, like they must be wise, mature, knowledgeable of the customary traditions, experienced, honest, and such. So they have no place for unqualified or shortcuts for becoming a leader. So even heirs to titles of leadership must prove that they deserve that honor. So not just because like that's a heirloom in their family. So if indigenous people can impose such strict or high standards on themselves when it comes to leadership, then the public servants can do no less. Public servants, especially when dealing with these communities, must manifest that they are qualified to take over the decisions making for them, for the larger society. So merit and fitness should always prevail, not just like about being they become from political dynasty family, or just they have the money but they don't have the brains, because if the IP communities have, like, you can just deem IPs like they are uneducated, so they don't know better. But if they are able to impose such high standards in their leadership, then why not in the national government or the political and administrative leaders? Because if they say IPs are uneducated, then if they are uneducated, so they should know better. But then we cannot say that's just the most people would say. But of course that is not true, because we have different traditions, we have different cultures that we have grown upon, and their culture and tradition have been there existing even before the colonization. So if they're able to survive, then there is nothing wrong with their leadership. And of course how the national or the government, the formal government should, the public servant should take a look on how those type of leadership standards should be even importance in order to lead the community or the society, and not just about like that's just nga dili lang kuan ang isa ka standard dira kay mulagin na sa atua. I mean, sa national government ang kuan ra, ang qualification is read and write, but then indigenous people have been able to give a higher standard, so we should do that also. Thank you for listening, everyone.